Good morning. My name is Sandra Hurd, and I'm here to present on my presentation entitled Who We Are. And this is Impartial Fulfillments for Social Psychology, Psychology 532 here at Houston Christian University. And today's date is September 24th, 2023. And let me make a quick disclaimer. My voice may come in and out at times while I am recording this because I am right now, unfortunately, suffering from very bad allergies. So forgive me in advance. Okay, who we are. Now, to answer this question, I think, and I know I've experienced this myself, identification, it can depend on, where we feel most comfortable and where our support systems are, and where we feel like we are, part of a group, or we find our, like I always like to use the term, air quotes, tribe, and where we can feel we can relate mostly to people that we have similarities with. And I also think it depends on where we are at the time and how we identify ourselves. If we are a Cowboys fans, go Cowboys, we will identify ourselves as a Cowboys fan if we're at a football game or maybe in a sports bar or something and you see people with their jerseys on, you're going to identify as, being part of, supporting your team. I think that also helps us to identify. But most of the time, in today's society, when you ask people to identify themselves, we can identify ourselves in so many ways, as you can see. And it's not limited to, but these are most things that how people identify themselves when you just ask the question in general. Your race, your ethnicity, your religious affiliation, socioeconomic status, even political party, culture, sex, and also sexual orientation. And of course, for the purposes of this presentation, we're going to focus on the latter, the sexual orientation. And I was doing research on this topic. I found like an online dictionary that broke down how people identify themselves through gender. And in all honesty, I did not know that there are so many ways in which people identify themselves. If you take a look at some of these, I'm not going to, of course, read all these to you. And some of these I have heard, some of these I didn't have a clue. I've heard of the AFAB and the AMAB, the assigned female at birth and assigned male at birth. Um, I'm just now getting to know about cisgender, which means your gender identity matches the gender you were assigned at birth. You're considered cisgender. It's a shortened term, would be cis. Honestly, it sounds to me, and I could be wrong, that a lot of these terms could be used interchangeably, but when you look at the definitions and I guess when they're being used and when they're being asked, no, not really. I never heard of cishet, um, CISHET. That is considered a derogatory term in the LGBTQ community. Never heard of that. I've heard of gender fluid, gender identity. We kind of, know what that means. Gender confirmation is in the case you are now confirming the actual gender that you associate with. Excuse me. And on page 2, we have, anywhere from gender non-conforming to gender queer, gender questioning. I have heard of that. Gender transition, and there actually is a difference between gender transition and transgender. Again, until I saw this, article and started doing this research, I never knew that there was a big difference between the two. So in this, I am a student and I am learning a lot about gender identification and how people, prefer to see themselves. And in looking at this and looking for an article about this, a study, an empirical study about gender identification and using pronouns, I did come across this very interesting one. And, just looking at it says that we are often asked about gender during surveys at doctor's offices, hospitals, when we're completing insurance forms, financial documents, and even we would complete surveys for market and scientific research. And honestly, excuse me, as a person who I guess identifies as a female, that's it, nothing more, nothing less, no extra added or to that I'm just a female. I never honestly considered this until actually doing this research, that there are people who want to have their specific identity put on a survey so that they can be appropriately represented. And again, after this presentation, of course, I now get it. Okay. So other questions, of course, on surveys is about sex, ethnicity, age, and income bracket, but we never think about how people who want to identify as a certain pronoun, they're not being represented on these surveys, and that's what this study is all about. And it's important to know that when these sample populations are represented, you get, I guess, better data collection, and it encourages them to want to participate in research, and they'll be able to respond. You'll be able to get your data. Now, this study was conducted by Palanika and others. It's like, I think, four other people, and this was done back in 2020, where they examined the presence of a single pronoun question within a social research survey, and it increased comfort level, like I was talking about, it perceived relevance of them being heard, they have a voice, satisfaction and importance of taking a survey within a large heterosexual cisgender individuals as well as LGBTQIA members. Now, the findings of the study indicate that the pronoun questions in social surveys is received with positive attitudes. Again, people are represented, they have a voice, and they know that they're being heard. Now, what they did also find that gender queer population, they reported higher scores of satisfaction, comfort, and perceived relevance of the questions when given a survey about their gender pronoun versus a survey that did not ask. So for gender queer population, when they weren't asked specifically who they were, they didn't feel like they would answer the surveys like they should. They wouldn't give the responses that probably you would think should be given on a survey. They just didn't feel confident like they had a voice. But they also experienced high levels of neuroticism, according to this study. And this neuroticism, in this sense, is a trait signifying self-consciousness, irritability, anxiety, and emotional instability. This study also found that there were no major differences of survey conditions between individuals who identified as heterosexual or gay. However, heterosexual and gay had personality differences in that gay participants had higher extroversion levels and heterosexual participants had higher levels of agreeableness. So they agree with everything a lot with what they saw. Limitations, of course, of this particular study, that it was done in English. The use of English-speaking participants from U.S. And other cultures, um, it would be impacted differently with other cultures because, like, for example, the Chinese culture, there's no difference between he and she. And the French language, of course, we know that they use masculine and feminine pronouns to, you know, to assign to describe everyday things that you see in life. So that would be a limitation, is because of the English speaking aspect of this study. Another limitation was that it was self-administered, and may not have been generalized to the larger population, and you may have had some fake responses from what this study called troll participants. In conclusion, Palanika, and others, they concluded that using appropriate gender pronouns during written communication can further a better culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it can help organizations in the long run when they advertise, when they create their websites for employee applications, when they send out emails. It can help companies better to get better candidates inside their companies. Now, what did I learn? I learned the importance of finding your quote unquote tribe and being recognized with who you are and who you identify with and feeling comfortable with who you are. And the dictionary did help me to learn and understand these terms a little bit better, and how people want to see themselves. All right, these are my references, and I thank you so much for listening to my presentation.